Estate planning at its simplest form is really a list of instructions on what to do when I'm not here. And this might sound surprising, but we have quite frequently, in fact, seen estate plans created for pets. Now, if that's surprising, you got to think about it legally. In the eyes of the law, a pet is really just a piece of property, living and breathing property, but property nonetheless. So you can plan for your pet after you pass, just like you would plan for a watch collection or the ownership of a vintage car. Now, what we see this in practice typically is planning for dogs, cats. Typically, you'll see more simple planning in those cases. Where you start to see some complexity is planning for larger, longer-lived animals. So think horses, birds. I've even seen a trust created for a tortoise. And you might not think about it, but tortoises can have lifespans that exceed several humans. So if you have a pet that you particularly feel strongly about, in some cases it might make sense to have your attorney draft a legal document or a provision in your existing legal documents providing for their care. There's a couple of different ways to approach this. And first thing I'll tell you, this is really something that has to be drafted by a qualified licensed attorney. This is not something that you want to DIY or do it yourself. But a couple of different options for you. Your pet can be named in your will. So the pet is identified in the will. If you pass away, the next caregiver of the pet is identified. And you can also have specific cash bequests or funds that will follow your pet to their next caregiver. I typically recommend that you want to run this by your chosen caregiver ahead of time so they don't come to your will reading and find out that they've got an unexpected little gift there. But that's probably the simplest way to do things. If you want to make it more complex, if you want greater control from beyond the grave, then that's typically going to lead to the pet being inserted into a section of your trust or a separate trust made for the pet's benefit. Now, this can get extremely complicated, but what the trust does is it allows you, as I mentioned before, greater control. So you can have specific standards for the care of your pet, and you can also allocate funds specifically for the meeting of those standards. I have seen a case where a parrot was transferred to a rescue once the owner had passed, and then that trust existed and funneled money to the rescue for not only that parrot's care, but also care for other animals. Now, I'll give you a word of caution here. Anytime you talk about a trust, understand that you're adding a lot of complexity to your estate plan. You're also going to be adding quite a bit of cost, not just the cost for the creation of the trust initially, but you'll also need to have a trustee that monitors the care of the animal and distributes funds on behalf of the trust. That all comes with a cost. Additionally, that trust is probably going to have to file a trust tax return for itself. So understand, while you're getting greater control, you're adding a lot of complexity, you are also adding a lot of cost. And that's going to be a discussion with you and your attorney, whether that additional expense and complication is worth it. If this is an area that you want to explore more, interestingly enough, in Oviedo, we have one of the best pet law or a pet trust law firms available, and we'd be happy to make a referral.